First though in this hour, a week ago I reported that the head of road policing had called on a zero-tolerance approach to speeding, with drivers being punished for going as little as 1 mile an hour over the limit. Well, Chief Constable Anthony Bangham said too many drivers think they've got a 10% buffer. Too many get away with nothing more than a speed awareness course. Well, that's certainly got you talking.
I tend to agree. I would be on the side of the police for all speeding, except I don't believe you can measure 1 mile an hour. It's ridiculous.
Everyone's speedo is not accurate. It's more of a guide.
We need a leniency because good drivers are driving appropriately for the road, appropriately for the speed of the traffic around them.
The amount of people in a 30 mile an hour zone that would literally try to get into my boot, they weren't happy because I was doing dead on 30.
Well, now, celebrity lawyer Nick Freeman, otherwise known as Mr. Loophole, he's called on Anthony Bangham to resign. He's told the media Mr. Bangham is clearly unfit to be the roads policing lead for National Police Chiefs Council. I think he should step aside and instead set his sights on addressing his own force's woeful crime statistics. Well, Nick will be live on my programme very shortly. We'll hear from him. And, of course, I want your calls as well. Do you agree with Nick Freeman that the 1 mile an hour police officer should resign? Here's the telephone number for your call. It's 03459 455 555.
The JVS Show.
Call Jonathan Vernon Smith now.
03459 455 555.
The JVS Show.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
First, though, a week ago I reported that the head of road policing had called on a zero-tolerance approach to speeding, with drivers being punished for going as little as 1 mile an hour over the speed limit. Chief Constable Andy Bangham said too many drivers think they've got a 10% buffer, and too many get away with nothing more than a speed awareness course. Well, it certainly got you talking, didn't it?
I am in support of it. I've spent 17 years working with the NHS ambulance service, I still do, full time, and unfortunately the tragic reality is speed kills.
I tend to agree with the last caller. I would be on the side of the police for all speeding, except I don't believe you can measure 1 mile an hour. It's ridiculous.
Everyone's speedo is not accurate. It's more of a guide.
So if your speedo is saying you're doing 70 miles an hour, then you're never doing more than 70 miles an hour. If you are, then your vehicle is actually not legal.
We need a leniency because good drivers are driving appropriately for the road, appropriately for the speed of the traffic around them.
It is actually quite difficult to focus and concentrate on speed limits, especially at low speeds at 30, and it's easier to slip over.
I've recently retired, but when I was working, I worked in Bedford, and I always set my cruise control to the actual number. The amount of people in a 30 mile an hour zone that would literally try to get into my boot and try and edge out, is there anything in front, can I overtake? They weren't happy because I was doing dead on 30.
Well, now, celebrity lawyer Nick Freeman has called on Anthony Bangham to resign. He's told the media Mr. Bangham is clearly unfit to be the roads policing lead for the National Police Chiefs Council, and I think he should step aside and instead set his sights on addressing his own force's woeful crime statistics. Well, Nick will be on my programme in just a second, and I very much want your calls, your reaction to this. Do you agree with Nick Freeman that the 1 mile an hour police officer should resign? Phone lines are open, 03459 455 555. Nick Freeman, good morning to you. Thanks for coming on.
Morning, Jonathan.
So what is it that he said that has angered you so much?
Well, there's several things. First of all, it's not a 10% buffer, it's an 11% buffer. He should know what his own buffer is. Secondly, if you started prosecuting people at 1 mile an hour in excess of the speed limit, you would clog the court up with thousands and thousands of cases. I think the recent statistics are that 53% of drivers speed on the motorway, 83% of drivers exceed the 20 mile an hour limit. So you've got the vast majority of drivers in the land who are speeding. So the vast majority are only just marginally exceeding the speed limit, and he's the sort that they're the sort of people that he wants to criminalise. So what we do is we fill the courts up with very with matters that are not serious, he wouldn't secure one conviction because it is impossible to convict somebody for doing 1 mile an hour over the speed limit, quite simply because speedometers are not calibrated. And that's one of the reasons why we have a buffer zone. That's one of the reasons. If you are obsessed with staring at your speedometer, you are ignoring what is going on around you. And you would be obsessed if there wasn't a tolerance zone, because you would be so preoccupied with not exceeding that 30 mile an hour speed limit or 40 mile an hour speed limit, you would be transfixed on it. And the reality is people would then be driving at 35 miles an hour because they want to err on the side of caution. It will cost the economy billions and billions of pounds. It will cause massive frustration. And really, what we want is speed. Excessive speed kills. But 1 mile an hour, 2 miles an hour over the speed limit doesn't kill. What kills is bad driving. And I'm not for 1 minute condoning people who drive at excessive speed. I think the police should do a job. They should be prosecuted. And in appropriate cases, they should be sometimes incarcerated if the speed is so high that it's bordering on dangerous driving. The reality is we see very few police officers on the streets now and on our roads. And what we do have is a situation in Mr. Bangham's own backyard that outside his own police headquarters, I think two motorists were speeding every minute past his own backyard, which sort of highlights the sort of point that I'm making. And last year, the crime in his area, in West Mercia, increased by 13% across the board. But violent crime increased by 16%, and sexual offences increased by 23%. And my message to him is that he should be far more preoccupied with what society wants, which, of course, we're limited with resources. Everyone accepts that. These are times of austerity. And what we want is the police to prioritise what the public regard as crime, as opposed to travelling 1 mile an hour in excess of the speed limit.
The support that he did get when we discussed this last week, though, it was from people who were saying that the principle of what he's saying is correct. That we have a situation now where people think that if there is a limit of 40 miles an hour, then they can set their cruise control to 45 miles an hour. If there's a limit of 30 miles an hour, they can go that little bit more than the limit. And what he was saying was that's not okay. If the limit is 30, you should be doing 29 or 30. You should not be doing 31 or 32.
I think what we want is realistic speed limits. And to suggest that in some circumstances I absolutely agree, and if we're going past schools then the speed limit should be strictly adhered to. And when people set their cruise control at, say, 20 miles an hour, the reality is they're probably doing 18 miles an hour. When they set it at 30 miles an hour, the reality is they're probably doing 28 miles an hour. And of course most people don't set their cruise controls at those speeds. They just drive using their right foot to control the accelerator. And so they get frustrated when someone is driving at 27, 28 miles an hour in a clear road when it's a 30 mile an hour limit. They're thinking, why aren't you travelling at 30? And then when we look at the motorways, and there are a huge number of people who speed on the motorways, we're governed by and large, I mean, if you can get to 70 miles an hour, but it's a 70 mile an hour limit, although these smart motorways now, even upon completion, seem to be imposing a 50 mile an hour limit. That's a different point. To expect motorists in modern sophisticated cars, in appropriate weather conditions, when the traffic flow is not particularly heavy, to travel at 70 miles an hour is, I'm afraid, living in the dark ages. It's unrealistic. It's not what people expect to do.
I'd thought so as well.
Bear in mind, Johnson, that 70 mile an hour speed limit was the maximum speed of the Ford Anglia in the late 50s, early 60s, and that's where the speeds come from. And we've come on massively since then. That was 50 years ago plus. Yeah. We need more realistic speeds.
I had also
as they do have in Europe, and then people might be more tolerant of the speed limit instead of thinking, well, they're too slow, they're unrealistic, and we'll break them wherever we can.
I'd also thought that everybody from time to time drifted very slightly over the speed limit, and I don't think I could honestly say, hand on heart, that there haven't been times where on a motorway I've done slightly more than 70. Not on purpose, but sometimes you can just drift slightly over the speed limit. I had thought that was the norm. Last week when we discussed this, I heard from a number of people, including one man who sticks in my mind, who was a paramedic, and he said, hand on heart, he has never, ever gone even 1 mile an hour over the speed limit. Isn't he a better driver than someone like me who, to be honest, from time to time might have drifted slightly over the limit?
Jonathan, what I would say to you is speed is one aspect of driving, and there are a whole host of other aspects: observance, awareness, lane control. So yes, speed is important, but what we're doing as a society is we're just concentrating on speed. And yes, excessive speed does kill, but really what kills is when people are in the middle lane and without indication they swerve across into the outside lane. That's bad driving. Those are the sort of drivers that we need to target. We need to target people who are doing 130, 140 miles an hour on the motorway. Those are the people who are over 100 miles an hour. But people who are travelling at 32, 33 miles an hour, yes, okay, they might be breaking the law, but they're not really causing a danger to other people. And my point is we need to prioritise the bad drivers and the bad criminals. And we can't prioritise everybody, so we have to make choices. And Mr. Bangham, by suggesting that we start prosecuting people for travelling 1 mile an hour above the speed limit, it's unenforceable. You would not get one conviction. So what is the lead officer on our roads making such a ludicrous suggestion about? If he seriously suggests that, and he has done, I've seen his report, his speech to the Police Federation. He, I'm afraid, in my view, is not fit to continue with that role, and he should resign. It is a harebrained suggestion.
Nick, thank you very much indeed. Nick Freeman, celebrity lawyer known as Mr. Loophole.